Happy Wednesday, everybody. Welcome into the show and welcome on in. You're watching Philadelphia Eagles now. My name is Chase Sr., and as always, no matter where you are, how you're tuned in, thank you so much for making today's show a part of your day. And if you're a little bit late and you're watching the program on Thursday, that's fine as well because we're bringing you elite Eagles coverage every single day year-round. Coming up here on the show, we have an Eagles offensive coordinator update. Philadelphia signed a sneaky good running back, and I think the Eagles could have plans for this player to potentially be their fullback of the future. Of course, that can be offensive coordinator dependent as well, but over the last couple of years, the Eagles have utilized the fullback position pretty well in the run game, and the Eagles also signing additional players. Since that Eagles loss to the Niners in the wild card round, Howie Roseman ain't sleeping. He's been very busy. I do want to begin here, though. We're closing in on another subscriber milestone, and I want all of you to help us get there. And you're a winner at the end of the day, because if you hit that subscribe button, you get great coverage right here on YouTube from us truly. So we're 33 people away from 143,000 subscribers. And if you want Eagles content that's informative, insightful, entertaining, thought-provoking, where you have a voice, join the community, join the movement, and lock us in and hit that sub button. Diana Rossini, NFL insider for The Athletic, with this report here on this Wednesday afternoon, on this January 14th, that the Philadelphia Eagles have begun reaching out to offensive coordinator candidates regarding that vacancy after Kevin Patullo was fired on Tuesday. And how about these two names popping up? Former Dolphins coach Mike McDaniel and former New York Giants head coach Brian Daboll are at the top of the Eagles list, sources say. Let's first talk about Brian Daboll here, experienced play caller who oversaw top 10 offenses while being the offensive coordinator for the Buffalo Bills, and he helped to develop Josh Allen early in his career. And when Josh Allen played his college football at Wyoming, he was far from the player who he is today. And today, he's a perennial MVP candidate and maybe the most talented and best quarterback in the National Football League. But when he got drafted by the Bills, he was inaccurate. Throughout college, he was a sub 60% guy. He was still big. He was athletic. He had a big arm. But Brian Daboll helped to refine his skill set. I also like the track record of Daboll and who he's learned under. He coached under Bill Belichick. He coached under Nick Saban. He also has a lot of familiarity with this Eagles organization, from the offensive players on the roster to the coaching staff. He was Jalen Hurts' offensive coordinator while at Alabama. That was the year that Hurts got benched in the national championship for Tua Tagovailoa, but they overlapped. Daboll also coached Devontae Smith during his time at Alabama and Saquon Barkley with the New York Giants. That's your QB1. That's one of your top wide receivers, and that's your RB1 right there. And then Daboll worked with Nick Sirianni when they overlapped with their respective coaching careers while with the Kansas City Chiefs. And Nick Sirianni has said this before, but he looks up to Daboll. Daboll is one of his mentors, so they already have a really good relationship. Daboll, of course, good first year with the New York Giants. Led them to a playoff win on the road against the Minnesota Vikings before getting dusted by the Eagles in the divisional round. That's when the Eagles got home field advantage there. And I like what he did with Daniel Jones that season. Now, after that, it didn't necessarily work out all that well, but sometimes guys are better as a coordinator as compared to a head coach. And if Brian Daboll wants to be a head coach once again, I imagine that's the case. He has an interview set with the Tennessee Titans for their open head coaching vacancy. Going to the Eagles is a great opportunity for him to coach a loaded offense that next year will be a Super Bowl contender for an organization that has been a breeding ground for front office executives who want to elevate and go somewhere else and maybe be a GM or have a higher title in a front office, for a coach who's looking to become a head coach, or they've mastered player development as well. And then we flip the page to Mike McDaniel, different offensive mind than Brian Daboll. And he would be much more of an extravagant hire as compared to Daboll. Daboll would run a scheme that I think the Eagles would prefer. McDaniel, on the other hand, from that Kyle Shanahan coaching tree. The Eagles also have familiarity with Mike McDaniel. When he was with the Niners as an assistant under Shanahan, the Eagles interviewed McDaniel to be their offensive coordinator in 2020. That was the final year for Doug Peterson. Now, Doug Peterson never ceded play calling duties, and he continued to call plays that year. But the Eagles looked at McDaniel as a guy who they wanted to bring in to add some flavor to Doug Peterson's offense, which grew a little bit stale after winning that Super Bowl in 2017. If McDaniel wants to be a head coach again, the Eagles can really help him. The Dolphins, awful organization. They kind of backstabbed Mike McDaniel, according to his best friend. They told him that he was going to come back, and then they ended up firing him after McDaniel played a role in their search for a general manager. Eagles would never do that. Jeffrey Lurie, Howie Roseman, probably the best owner-GM combo in the sport. And for those of you who were impressed by Kyle Shanahan's offense on Sunday and what that Niners team did with less talent compared to Philadelphia, you might like the possibility of the Eagles hiring McDaniel. In 2023, when he was the head coach of the Miami Dolphins with a lesser quarterback than Jalen Hurts in Tua Tagovailoa, the Dolphins were number 2 as far as their scoring offense, number 1 in total offense. His offense dynamic, has a really good run game. The Eagles are a team that wants to run the football, especially behind this offensive line, which does need to get better and healthier with Saquon Barkley. The issue with McDaniel's offense, which could cause some problems for quarterback Jalen Hurts, a lot of it requires in-breaking routes, crossers, throws over the middle, anticipatory throws. And Jalen Hurts hasn't always been confident with that. Now, when he has been asked to do that, I actually think Hurts has fared well. So I think it's up to Hurts to get out of his comfort zone. But those are some thoughts there on Mike McDaniel. 2 other candidates who are popping up as possibilities for Philadelphia here, according to reports. Cliff Kingsbury, former Commanders offensive coordinator. Kevin Stefanski, former Browns head coach. For Stefanski, 2-time coach of the year with the Cleveland Browns, Philly area native, so he'd have some local ties. He went to Penn. He was a former Eagles intern way back in the day. His play-action passing game and zone running scheme is something that I think the Eagles would prefer to run. But it would be different from Nick Sirianni, which I like. Last year, before they elevated Kevin Patullo and internally promoted him, I had said, I want the Eagles to go outside of the organization. I think it's always valuable to get some fresh ideas and maybe marry that with some of the things that you like to do from a conceptual standpoint. For Cliff Kingsbury, I'm not the biggest fan of Kingsbury and this offense, but the Eagles did interview him before hiring Kellen Moore prior to the 2024 season. So the previous interest has certainly been there. In 2024, when Jaden Daniels was a rookie and the Commanders made that run to the NFC Championship game before getting bounced by the Eagles as the Birds put up 55 points on the Commies. The Commanders were top 5 in EPA per play. Hurts does have experience playing in this offensive system. He did it at Oklahoma under Lincoln Riley, who is also a Mike Leach disciple. So with that, let's pop up today's poll question here. We're just getting started on the show. Don't go anywhere. Who is your top choice to be the Eagles offensive coordinator? Let me know. Drop me a name down below in the comment section right now. Still to come here on Eagles Now. Continue to hit that thumbs up icon, like the video, share your comments, subscribe to the channel, and interact down in the comment section. The Eagles signed a sneaky good running back, and the Eagles also signed additional players. We'll get to that here in just a moment. But first, today's Philadelphia Eagles Now is brought to you by PrizePicks. Whether you're starting a new routine to kick off 2026 or you're making player picks for the first time, trying something new can be hard. But in life and on PrizePicks, it always feels good to be right, doesn't it? With high-pressure playoff matchups every weekend and elite hoops action almost every night, the action never stops, and PrizePicks lets you take control. New feature alert. PrizePicks now has early payouts. If your player gets off to a hot start, you now have the option to cash out of those winnings before the game even finishes. You can also find your community on PrizePicks. With the new social feeds feature, you can share PrizePicks with your friends and copy lineups from winners with a single click. Copy lineups you like or use them as inspiration for your own picks. You can even follow PrizePicks partners like us and tail or fade our picks with just one click. 2-pick power play for some playoff action here. Josh Allen, more than a half rushing or receiving touchdown against the Denver Broncos. What a special that is, And then Puka Nacua more than a half rushing or receiving touchdown. That Rams passing game obviously goes right through him. Download the PrizePicks app today. Use the code CLNS to get $50 in lineups after you play your first $5 lineup. That's code CLNS to get $50 in lineups after you play your first $5 lineup. PrizePicks, it's good to be right. All right, Eagles making a couple of roster moves here in the aftermath of that ugly, heartbreaking loss against the Niners. The Eagles signed a running back, adding former Kansas City Chief Carson Steele to a futures contract. I actually like this move. He played his college football at Ball State, and then he transferred to UCLA. UDFA, who signed with the Chiefs as an undrafted free agent following the 2024 draft, 6 foot, 228 pounds. He can pack a punch with how he plays the game of football and how he runs. And with the Chiefs, he was known to be, especially going into his rookie year, a training camp and preseason darling. And my first thought when I saw that the Eagles added him to the roster is Philadelphia signing Carson Steele to be their future fullback. Of course, this can be very offensive coordinator dependent, but in that Kyle Shanahan system, if you want to go after a Mike McDaniel or you want to go after somebody else from that tree, they utilize the fullback. And we saw how Kyle Juszczyk was utilized by Kyle Shanahan. I mean, Kyle Shanahan did a better job of scheming open Kyle Juszczyk than Kevin Patullo did for Devontae Smith or A.J. Brown. And in this Eagles running game, they're a fan of utilizing the fullback. Last year, they really started to incorporate Ben Van Sumeren a lot during the 2024 season. Unfortunately for him, he ended up tearing his ACL, and then on the very first play of the 2025 season, kickoff coverage against the Dallas Cowboys, he got hurt again. So last year, they went to Corey Blasingame, and they added him and utilized him all throughout the NFL playoffs. This year, they used a little Kylan Granson, Cam Latu at the fullback spot, but Van Sumeren, really good athlete, now has injury concerns. Cam Latu, a converted tight end, who I think would be a solid fullback if he continues to work there. But then you have Carson Steele, who does have experience playing the fullback spot. Didn't register any stats in 2025 for Kansas City, but he did get some run in 2024 with the Chiefs en route to that team making it to the Super Bowl before they got shellacked by the Eagles. 56 carries, 183 yards last year, 3.3 yards per carry, 7 catches for 26 yards. But he was a Pro Bowl alternate who finished behind Patrick Ricard of the Baltimore Ravens. He's the second best fullback in the game behind Kyle Juszczyk in Pro Bowl voting. And look at the utilization of Steele by Andy Reid. 190 snaps in the backfield, 2 snaps at tight end, 1 snap in the slot, 6 out wide. He also returned 5 kicks. I'd say that the Eagles' kick return game wasn't all that good this season, and so they're going to give Carson Steele a long look as a backup running back, potentially as this team's future fullback, and I'm excited to see what he could do potentially for the Eagles here. These players also being signed to future contracts. We talked about some of these players getting signed by the Eagles on Monday or Tuesday earlier this week. Safety Andre Sam, tight end E.J. Jenkins, offensive tackle John Ojukwu, fullback Carson Steele. So they're listing him as a fullback here. Linebacker Chance Campbell, who a lot of players on the 53-man roster really like, and they said that he's one of the better practice squad and scout team players that they've gone up against. He's a speedy, physical linebacker who can pack a punch. And the likes of Jordan Mailata, Cam Jurgens, Saquon Barkley raved about Chance Campbell. Defensive back Tariq Castro-Fields, wide receiver Danny Gray, defensive tackle Gabe Hall, defensive back Brandon Johnson also signing 2 future contracts. A lot of Eagles players are high on Brandon Johnson as well. Center Jake Majors, who the Eagles signed during the season. He was a pretty good player for the Texas Longhorns. Offensive tackle Hollin Pierce, and good old steady wide receiver Quez Watkins signing a future contract with the Eagles as well. He sneakily was on the practice squad for the Eagles pretty much the entire season. All right, don't forget to hit that subscribe button anytime there's breaking news. Anytime there's something developing around the Eagles, I always have you covered right here on Philadelphia Eagles Now.